Senator Alex Antic has joined me now. He's just left Senate committee in Canberra to join us for this interview. Alex, since you got that Freedom of Information crest, have you been able to glean any more detail on this from your questioning of bureaucrats in Senate estimates?
Well, not a lot, Nick. I got to say, this is pretty extraordinary, as you said in your intro there. And what we got from our Freedom of Information request back 6 months ago was a 28-page document entirely redacted, all of it, every single page just blanked out, and some numbers. And the numbers said, and we asked for a 5-year period just to give it some reference, that 13,000 odd requests were made by Home Affairs to various platforms. So that's all of them. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Around about 9,000 or so related to terrorism-related content. So, fair enough. That's what the whole purpose of that arrangement presumably was. But 4,213 related to COVID-related matters. And I quizzed the bureaucrats, the Department of Home Affairs, yesterday in Senate estimates, and really what I was told was we don't take these posts down. We just simply request that they be taken down, and we do so because of what we're told from other departments, such as the Department of Health. Now, to me, that sounds like what we've been seeing in the United States, which is effectively a censorship industrial complex where you've got big tech, you've got the social media companies interacting with government departments, and then ultimately, presumably, the message coming from places like the WHO and the CDC in the United States, and maybe even big pharmaceutical companies. And we're seeing a conga line, almost a bureaucratic conga line, and the net effect of that is that Australians are less free to speak on what are now the main news platforms that we have. Really, this is an important tool for Australians. So this problem's never been addressed, and this really has exposed what I think is a really troubling development.
So let's get this straight. They're using basically legislation that was passed to do with terrorism to do this, right? Legislation which at the time, I think some of us sort of raised our eyebrows and thought, well, we wouldn't want this to go too far, but at least in fighting terrorism, it seemed a reasonable thing. But of course, you always get mission creep, don't you? They then take this legislation and say, well, why not? We'll use this to shut people up on social media if they happen to be saying bad things about the vaccine or anything like that.
And that's exactly what happened. I mean, it starts off, I think it was described during Senate estimates as starting from the Christchurch massacre, when I think the shooter live streamed a lot of it. And, no one has any issues with that sort of stuff being removed. Of course it has to be. But as you say, it's mission creep. It's bracket creep. It's this sort of slippery slope argument that we see all the time when we give away freedoms of any nature. And this is really no different. This is another version of that, whereby what started out as a system, and the reason that Home Affairs were given this task was because they had the system already in place. If you build it, they will come. So my question to them was, well, what's next? Are we going to start to see Home Affairs being the enforcers of a climate narrative or enforcers of a voice narrative? Where does it stop? And really, that was all kind of brushed off and rejected. But, if you'd said 5 years ago that the Department of Home Affairs, the department that's there to deal with border control, terrorism and so forth, was enforcing a public health narrative, you'd get some very, very side looks on that. And so here we are. This is exactly what's happened.